All right, we have another episode of Tailwind. Today we're joined by Lisa Mulyk. Lisa, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
First of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My name is Lisa Mulyk, and I'm a fractional CRO, which basically means I go in and I help companies with their sales process. Soup to nuts, do a quick evaluation of what's going well, what's not, and then help them develop systems and processes and make sure they have the right people working with them and they're properly trained to drive sales.
Hmm.
And I work with small to medium-sized businesses, but my background is with some rather large companies for over the last 30 years. Had a lot of fun learning a ton and being a sales leader for a long period of time. So it's wonderful to be able to help some of these smaller companies really see their value and grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that background is perfect for the topic for today, which is sticking to the fundamentals in AI. Tell me a little bit more about your stance.
It's a love-hate.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of feels that way. I think there's a lot of fear attached to it right now because it's going to take my job. But I also think it's very exciting. And I'm going to date myself because I'm going to go back to when the internet started.
Hmm.
And I remember being very young and freaked out a little bit about that. What's that going to mean for us? What does it mean for privacy? How are we going to conduct business? All the things that we're accustomed to doing, we're going to change. And we're at that point again, right? So we can either embrace the change or we can run away from it. I think we're going to have to embrace the change. I think we're going to have to be very careful not to over rotate with it because I think if
Hmm.
you read the news and all the layoffs and all the things that companies are attributing to AI is going to replace, some of these functions, I think they're also discovering that it's not, first of all, where it needs to be to do so. And you still need humans. I mean, we have to direct it. It's
Yeah.
a tool, it's a GPS. So I think if we embrace the change, we're willing to learn. Those who are going to do that are also going to accelerate versus those that dig their heels in because it's
Hmm.
not going away. But I also think that those soft skills that humans have are going to become more and more important. So if you don't know how to have a real conversation and connect with people, now's the time to really learn
Yeah.
because, you know, the machine can only do so much. And we have to use our insight and just generally say, okay, does that really make sense? Right?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of things that can go wrong with AI as well. So automate the tasks that make sense that we can repeat over and over and over again. Take that time back. I always used to say, I don't know anyone in business these days, or even in a personal life, that doesn't feel like they could use some more time in a day
Hmm.
to sit down and actually sharpen the saw and think.
Right.
So if you look at it that way, it's wonderful, right? But you also don't know where it's going to work or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get to the positives, but I feel like if we start with the negatives, then we can build them in on a happy note.
Love
So
it.
what are some of the negative things that you're seeing with AI and maybe some of the over rotations?
I think that there's a point now where some people are becoming over dependent on it,
Hmm.
right? They don't even want to check their email anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like, oh, I'll just have it fire back. Thank you. Um, if you become over reliant on anything, you lose some basic skills. So I'm going to use that
Yeah.
GPS example again,
Yeah.
right? GPS was great. And I remember when it first launched, and there were times when it literally brought you down a dirt road and you were about to go off a cliff because it just wasn't accurate.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
So you have to use common sense, right, with everything. So I purposely will shut off the GPS and not use it just to make sure I still have a sense of direction.
Mhm.
And that's actually something that I didn't have when I was younger at all. I got a job with a company car, and they said, you're going to have to go see all these people. And my parents were panicked, right? She can't find her way out of a shoebox, right? But I learned, right?
Mhm.
So you still have to have those skills, even with the tools that we're using, whether it's AI or anything else. So just make sure that you still have those tools, that you can still think that if your phone dies, you can function.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's one important kind of note on the negatives, but the positive, if we're going to think about that, man, can I get some time back and I can research something really, really fast
Hmm.
and I can come into a meeting much more prepared um, to knock through the things that need to be covered and have a much more intelligent conversation. And it didn't take me a half a day to do it. So I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, the efficiency gains are huge. It's what we take from those efficiency gains and what are we doing in place of that to
Mhm.
get more done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole having an AI bot respond to my emails for me, that's wild. Especially if
People are
I'm in a
doing it.
sales role, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, hold on, that's when if like my clients or my prospects are trying to talk to me and I'm ignoring them. Like, the last thing I want to do is not take that opportunity to connect with them, when they're actually actively reaching out to me at some point in time. Um, do you have any, you're talking about, hey, it can make me over reliant, but then I can also have a superpower. Do you have any like guidance on like kind of ways to figure out how to draw the lines on, am I being over reliant or am I leaning into the reliant zone versus like leaning into the superpower zone?
I think you learn as you use it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's changing every day.
Mm-hmm.
So things that you thought were going to be really simple when you first started learning how to prompt properly,
Hmm.
um, you might do it again and it could come back completely different because
Yeah.
because it's learned and it's going to give you something different. And I find there's times when you're literally like, I don't know if you remember when like Alexa was launched, when Amazon, put the
Hmm.
spy in your house.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I don't have one, but that's a whole other
exactly.
conversation.
Yeah, my children got me one for
Yeah.
Christmas one year. I'm like, thank you for sending me another spy aside from the phone.
Yeah.
They know everything that I do now. But I joke around about it because there's definitely frustration points where there
Mhm.
was a whole Saturday Night Live skit that I remember watching with like older people arguing with Alexa. I'm finding that I'm arguing with Chat GPT sometimes going,
Yeah.
that's not what I wanted. Was I not specific enough? So you can waste a little bit of time there. Um, no joking aside, but I do think, like I said, it's fantastic for research. I'm finding that it's also, if I think back through my sales career, some of even the concepts and the training that I went through, I couldn't remember all of it, but I'm like, yeah, that was really useful. So I can go back and reference it and dig it up. It's almost like having a superpowered librarian, you know. It's the next generation of, what we use Google for when you think about it. Just to go and dig and find some things that spur my brain and go, oh yeah, I kind of like that angle. I think I can, especially with my clients, in some cases, if they're just learning even sales concepts, it helps to kind of rejigger my brain, go, oh yeah, I remember doing that. And it's really useful. And let me go share it with somebody. Right.
Mhm.
So that's just an example of one way that I've used it. Um, and I've just lost my train of thought.
It's all
So,
good. No, so as you were talking through it, one of the big uses I have for it is research as well. I think it's
mhm.
one of those opportunities where if I'm going to go into a conversation, I can figure out a lot more in a shorter period of time because I don't have to spend a bunch of time Googling, taking notes, doing all that. And one of the things that I found too is that if I require whatever, LLM tool that I'm using to provide citations, that really makes it a little bit more accurate, less likely to hallucinate. And if
Yep.
anything looks fishy, I can go, well, where'd you get this from? And I can go click on the citation and go read it for myself, which, at times have been like, oh, no, that's legitimate. Or I don't know if I trust this source. Like this is a Reddit thread. I'm not gonna run with this. Not to say
Yeah.
there's not good information there, but I want to work from a little bit more of a place of understanding and,
And
reliability than some people's opinions.
that is a great tip, by the way, which I always use as well. Is like, please provide citations. Like, where did you get this from? Because then I can go back and I can double
Mhm.
check and
Yeah.
say, that looks right. This something's not sitting right with this piece of it. And sometimes even the language, don't copy and paste everything that you get. Like,
Oh, please no. Yeah.
use human language, think about what you're saying. It can definitely reword some things in a beautiful way, but you really need to have your own voice in there.
Hmm.
Um, if you're somebody that's a little bit more direct, then you probably want a little more direct. If you're a little softer, it probably should be said in a different way.
Yeah.
So, again, great tool, but you still have to spend the time to go look at it. The other thing that's been interesting, and I was actually just in a roundtable meeting with a bunch of other CROs, and we were talking all about all the different tech stacks and the different pieces of AI that flow into any process.
Mhm.
And one of the questions was, and of course they called on me. I'm like, why'd you call on me first? Was, what particular tech stack are you using mainly with your clients right now? And I just paused and I said, it depends on where they are,
Mm.
right? So that's always another thing that's really important is where are you in the journey?
Yeah.
If it's a bigger company that's got some of the tools like CRM systems in place and things like that, and they're just refining their strategy, they might need different components of AI to drive the system a little bit faster, more accurate, et cetera. But if they're just starting, like I've
Mhm.
got some little clients, they're just starting. I'm like, you can't sell them a Mercedes when they don't even have understand how to like turn the key to the ignition. We don't
Yeah.
even have
Yeah.
those anymore, right? We have fobs. But that's precisely my point is you just have to know where you are, how much you know about it. I mean, everybody wants to say they're doing AI, but do you really understand where you are? Do you have an AI policy, which is really important? Like, how are
Mhm.
you allowed to use it within your business? Very different from your personal life, right? There are probably some things that you should be doing and some things that you shouldn't be doing. And you really need to think through that along with the legal aspects of things, particularly if you're in an industry that's highly regulated. You
Yeah.
need to think about those things. And, I think everybody wants to dive first into it, but sometimes you need to take a pause and say, we're going to slow down a little bit. The other thing that's very tempting is to chase the shiny new toy.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And because there's so many companies that are out there, and you and I both know that it's going to consolidate. There's, the ones that are going to do really well are going to get gobbled up by some rather large companies, and that's probably the hope in the dream when you start raising money to develop all these tools. But there's this race too. So some of the folks that I'm talking to are saying, look, we're not telling anybody to sign a contract for more than like a month if they
Mhm.
can do that, because there might be something that's better that comes out later, right? And then there's also a need for evaluation. Um, I probably get 20 solicitations a day for perspective.
Mhm.
Probably a lot of them are AI driven because I had one that hit me up 10 times in a day
Oh
and I
wow.
was very mad and frustrated. I'm like, stop it, cut them out of my inbox, but they still somehow managed to weasel through again. And I will never do business with that company because it's
Yeah.
irritating,
Absolutely.
you know? So, I guess what I'm saying is like, you got to do the evaluation. You got to try a little bit before you dive deep into it and make long-term commitments because things are changing rapidly. That said, it's also a challenge, right? How much time do we really have to play with all of these new tools, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know that there's an authority yet
I
on
think it's
evaluating
early.
these things, but
Yeah, I'd
you
agree with
know,
that. I think you made really two interesting points that I think go really well hand in hand in there, which is there was an AI bot clearly harassing you, and they're
mhm,
like, "Well, I'm never working with that company." And I think there's that risk, which is this idea of having this AI SDR that's persistent, that never takes a break, that can hit up your entire TAM, your total addressable market within a short period of time. Uh,
mhm,
Very tempting. And then on the exact opposite side of that is, and it could burn every bridge within your addressable market, and you might have to rename your company because some bot got let loose and was just over hitting up every single person. Um, and so it's like there's that temptation, there's that flip side. And what you were talking about is, having like an AI policy in place. And
mhm,
from an organization where we kind of started natively as an AI company, we don't deliver AI, but we were natively delivering using AI from the start. We were always highly aware of all the risks. So we've
mhm,
kind of had our internal one, and like that's been working for a small team that we have now. But as we grow, we're going to have one in place, right? Like, so from somebody who's thought about this already, has put them in place. What are some of your things that people should take in consideration? What are some guidances on putting together a good AI policy? And what does it cover? Telling somebody who probably needs to put together one, hopefully, as we grow a team, what would you say to me as like a starting point?
I think you have to do an evaluation of how you're using it to start
Hmm.
right now, right? So take some time to take all that in, think about where you think you need to go,
Hmm.
right? You also need to think about the other companies that you're working with, your partners. Are there other pieces of data, that you're bringing in? I'll give you an example. I've got another person that I talk to in a market research space. Their business is dependent upon taking data from all different places, cleaning that data, and then using it to make some very intelligent business decisions. But they have to
Yeah.
depend on a third party to work for whoever their client is. They have to work with whoever they're working with to bring that data in, which
Hmm.
means there's going to be legal documents relative to NDAs, sharing, and everything else that are going to basically say, you're allowed to have this. This is the only way you're allowed to use it,
Hmm.
right? And there are definitely some clauses that are in there about generative AI because everybody's very worried that proprietary information is going to somehow get behind the wall and then get out again,
Yeah.
right? So that's just a specific example of understanding where it works in your business, where some of the risks are. You need to think about from a tech security, all those perspectives, where is it going? How is it going to be housed safely? And then also the legal ramifications if something happens,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of a whole suite of things that you just need to think about. And, you know, Sales, you could say, like what we just talked about, we are going to draw a line in the sand and say we're only going to contact so many times. We're going to make sure that we're going to give a little space. We're going to make sure that we're not scraping any proprietary information when we use it. So you can develop a policy specifically around that, but you really need a corporate policy that covers all the different aspects of some of the things that you're doing because it's all different departments,
Yeah.
right? So that would be how I would start with a client. And then I'm not necessarily an AI expert.
Yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous, but I would definitely consult with somebody. And I have folks that I work with that are in my network of referrals that specifically work around that. And
Yeah.
they'll work with a legal department to say, this is how quickly it's changing. And here are some of the things that you need to think about,
Yeah.
right? So it's doing an assessment of where you are, where you want to go, and what departments are using it, and what are some of the things that are really great that we're doing. What are some of the things that could cause us a little bit of a hang up, either with our direct customers or third parties that we're working with? That would be where I would start.
And you brought it all the way, all the way from the top, from the super important to the, well, let's even put requirements on how much time like a bot needs to put in between something like that.
Hmm.
From a perspective of, let's say I'm a sales leader and maybe I'm just below the needing worry about corporate governance and arguing with legal all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm mostly just like trying to lead a team and trying to get them optimized using it. Would you recommend that policy being part of how that leader is talking to their sales team? And do you have any recommendations on, maybe not hard fast rules, or maybe you do have some hard fast rules on like what some of that policy should include on what people are allowed to or not allowed to do with AI?
Yeah, I think first of all, it needs to be socialized because we have a policy, but if nobody understands it or signs off on it, it doesn't matter.
Good point.
It doesn't matter. So, in general, any kind of corporate policy, when you think about it, you know, everybody needs to be knowledgeable about it. And
Mhm.
if you're in a particular industry that's got any kind of regulation or rules, everybody needs to understand what those are, and they need to sign off on it. And it needs to be done
Mhm.
regularly,
Yeah.
right? Because things are going to change. And then if I'm leading a sales team, you know, I need to know the policy as a leader, but I also need to reinforce that in my messaging,
Hmm.
in my observations, right? If I see something that looks like it's being done a little outside the lines, and I think it's going to be a problem, I will bring it up,
Yeah.
right? And then if it continues,
Mhm.
there are repercussions for that behavior, right?
Yeah.
As with everything, right? It's just another piece of it, right? So I think you have to be aware. You also have to be aware of the changes that are coming, and make sure that everybody's aligned. And yep, we acknowledge that we understand what we should or should not be doing.
Would you take it down even to the level of you are not allowed to send an AI generated message without first editing it? Or do you think that there's enough
I I think you
differences
got to
in,
just do best practices, right? I
yeah,
mean, you don't want to be overly, you don't need to hammer it, but
yeah.
I do think you need best practices, and part of that is explaining what happens when something
Hmm.
doesn't go right.
Yeah.
Like this is the potential, whoops. that or wow, we just caused a major issue if you don't think through it. That and maybe you don't look that smart either. Just like I can tell pretty quickly when something comes through that's completely like there was not a human that touched it,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Um, so it's explaining, and this is again the case whenever we have profound change, we learn. I remember even when we were in COVID,
Hmm.
I had a big team and I was asked, hey, can you talk about doing effective virtual presentations?
Mm-hmm.
And we all had our moments there. And I literally pulled up, if you go and look at epic fails in video calls on YouTube, there's some fantastic material that'll make you laugh like crazy, but you
Yeah.
don't want to be that person, right? Rule number one was wear pants, right? It makes sense, right? You know, we're in the
Yeah.
same point, right? We're using more technology. We're changing the way we do business. So, take a step back, think,
Yeah.
use it where it's appropriate, make some modifications, and then hit send. It's a good rule even if you write your own email, particularly if it's something that's a little bit emotionally charged.
Yeah. Yeah. The one where you're like, I'm deleting that one and I'll
Step
try again
back, let it
tomorrow.
go for 24 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh.
Well, I think that's such a good comparison too. I know that becoming more, Zoom oriented or, being like, digitally like presenting things that was less profound to some degree than AI, but that was something that was kind of thrust upon a bunch of people and it fundamentally changed their business. And some people who adapted with it, it gave them opportunities to increase their talent pool to be beyond just certain geographic constraints. It increased the deliverability so they could do certain things where it used to require people in the office or in a room with them, and now
Hmm.
they can deliver remotely, or they can have clients on the West Coast if they're East Coast based because they were able to adopt this. And that's a very recent reminder. And it's like, well, I got those wins. I had my stumbling blocks, and AI is, I think, going to be much more transformational. But at least it's something that's like, hey, I just recently went through this technology like shove, like less than a
Hmm.
shift, more of a shove at that point, right?
Exactly.
And now you're getting another one, but now you're kind of like, okay, what did I learn during that period of time, and how can I apply it to this? There are
Yeah,
obviously
and
nuances and differences, though, right?
there are, and it's also different. I had another discussion around this same topic. It's the hot topic of the day.
It is.
I had an HR company that brought a whole bunch of executives in from different perspectives. You had people that were doing hiring, you had, operations teams, you had CFOs. It was a group of really great people. And we were talking a little bit about some of the ways that AI was changing even things like hiring,
Hmm.
right? Now that we have applicant tracking systems. And that was a mixed bag. There were a lot of people that were like, I can't stand it. It's, you get hundreds and hundreds of resumes and everybody's modifying, you know, what they did because they want to get past that tracking system. And there's probably a lot of candidates that you're not necessarily seeing.
Yeah.
That was just one topic that we covered. And we had a little bit of multi-generational teams and very different perspectives. So that's
Mm.
another thing that as an organization, you're going to start having to think about too, right?
Yeah.
Um, you've got folks that are a little bit older, like, my father's actually 80 and still in a startup, right?
Very cool.
And I'm teaching him, but he's at least willing to do it, right?
Yeah.
And his brother, also very successful, ran a whole company, called me in and goes, "Okay, I'm hearing all about this. I need to keep my skills sharp." But not everybody's going to feel that way,
Yeah.
right? So you have to really think also about generationally, what's this going to do,
Hmm.
right? Because there's going to be a different perspective, and I think the younger kids that grew up with a phone and electronics, like they grew up on the phone and the electronics,
Yeah.
they're going to come at it a little differently than somebody my age, right? And that's the case with a lot of things, not just AI. So there's this whole generational piece too, which is going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds,
Yeah.
you
I mean,
know.
would you say that, especially with AI, it's important to put together committees internally that include generational considerations to make sure that you're getting the full scope of understanding of kind of how things are shifting.
I think you should be doing that with everything that has impact on your
That's
business.
fair. Yeah.
Okay. I 100% agree with you. And it's also getting to a place where everybody feels safe to voice their opinion. You may
Mm,
not agree, but we also need to have some level of understanding and difference in thought and how, you know, one problem may be addressed 13 different ways.
yeah.
I personally love that. I don't need to be around a bunch of people that think exactly the way that I do because we're going to knock through something a lot faster if we got different points of view. I may be the executive that ultimately makes the call, but I
Mhm.
also want to understand where everybody's coming from because I can miss something really big if I'm only listening to the same group of folks that have, that are all coming from one cohort. I
Yeah.
think that's really important. And that's also going to shape the way that a lot of the AI tools are learning. When you think about it, you've got all different folks that are, I can just see where this is going, that
Hmm.
are, building all of this. So yeah, I think you definitely need different folks in the room to talk about how we're using it, because I do feel like based on just that one group, the ones that are literally right out of school are like, oh, I'm going to use it for everything. It's going to
Yeah.
tell me exactly when to brush my teeth in the morning,
Yeah.
and then you've got a little skepticism when you get in the 50 plus range going, we've been through some of these things before. I don't know if we want to throw 150% into it because we're going to miss something. And
Yeah.
that just comes with experience, right? So it's going to be very interesting. That'll be a hot topic, I think, in the next, 6 months or so. And then there's one more thing that I want to bring up,
Oh, please. Yeah.
and it's the impact to the economy. I think we're seeing it now because,
Hmm.
again, I think we've over rotated. I think in countries like the US, that's highly service oriented, okay, we're not doing as much manufacturing as we used to.
Right.
We're not doing as much, get your hands dirty jobs. I mean, those tradespeople are in great shape right now. It's going to be a while before the robots can do all the plumbing and the HVAC stuff, right?
Totally.
I think we're going to get hit a lot harder than some other countries
Hmm.
with this because it has a profound effect on some of the entry level jobs where tasks can be automated, some of the research jobs, all of
Right.
those things are going to be impacted much faster. So we're going to feel it first,
Hmm.
right? And it's going to have to evolve. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to, upskill a good chunk of the folks that are out there trying to work. And
Yep.
it's going to be painful in the beginning. You can see it already.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think it'll be really interesting how everything shifts. I think though, then to the point of, you wanted to talk about fundamentals in the age of AI when we started this
Mhm.
conversation, everything we've hit along the way from, governance to, navigating new technology to automation disrupting like labor forces. I mean, that's already happened in our past
Mhm.
many, many times. I mean, it seems like, a good way to think about it is, okay, this is a new technology. It's transformative. The fundamentals have not like shifted. They're still there. They're
Mhm.
still applicable. Still do the best practices. It's a new widget per se. I mean, a little different than that, but having the good policies, making sure there's coordination, multi-generational like committees, bringing all the different viewpoints, upskilling and all that stuff. I mean, I think if anything, it's just kind of like making the fundamentals even more important because you're going to have to rely on them more because it's such a new territory, but they're still applicable at this point.
Yeah, if we have this conversation a year from now, it'll be interesting to see what's happened because it's going so fast.
Yeah. We'll book
Yeah.
it June 30th
Yeah.
and June 30th, 2027. Let's see what
Okay. Yeah,
happens.
actually,
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be fun. I think we're
Yeah.
going to trip on ourselves a little bit. We
Oh
already
yeah.
have. But at the same time, like if you're somebody that embraces change, it's kind of cool,
Yeah, it's fun. All
right?
right. Uh,
Okay.
Final thoughts. What's the big takeaway for somebody? What's the summary that you'd want if somebody listened to this and they're gonna take one thing away and apply it to their business or their like leadership role? What would be the thing you'd say, this is the one?
I'd say lean in,
Yeah.
but make sure you know the depth of the pool before you dive.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, Lisa, I really appreciate it. This is really fascinating. I'm gonna have to start thinking about my own AA policy because as we start to grow, I'm gonna need to have more than just a
Yeah.
founder consensus on what we all understand to be the risks because that's not something that just osmosis is to somebody else.
Yeah,
So
sometimes you got to call in some folks that are
know
way
a little
ahead of
bit
it
more. Yeah.
that specialize in that. That is not me, but I know like where to start.
I'll maybe be calling you soon, hopefully. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks again,
you.
Lisa.
I appreciate the time.